For as long as she could remember, Yaroslava Viktorovich Volkova's world had been a world of violence. One of her first memories, back when she was just 4 years old, was playing hide-and-seek with her twin brother Kirill. That was back in London, in their family's mansion on Belgrave Square. Yaroslava, whom everyone called Yara, had snuck into their father's home office. She wasn't supposed to ever go in there. She knew that, but little Yara thought that meant it would be the perfect place to hide. She could remember the scene perfectly. The dim room with its cold fireplace and high ceiling, all gilded in gold, with old books on the shelves and a big wooden desk under the window. In the center of the room, a plastic sheet had been laid over the ornate rug, and 3 chairs were lined up on the sheet. In each chair, there sat a naked man. The men were tied down in their seats, with gags in their mouths and bruises all over their bodies. Little Yara didn't know what to do. She stood, rooted to the spot, looking at them. 2 of the men had long, deep cuts across their throats. Their heads were bowed, their chests and laps covered in blood. They weren't moving. But the 3rd man, the last man, he hadn't been sliced open yet. He was alive, weeping and moaning through his gag. He looked up at Yara, and his eyes were bloodshot and filled with tears, pleading for help, for deliverance from this certain doom. That's when Yara's father came into the room, Viktor Volkov. He was a huge man, tall and fat, with hairy hands and sharp grey eyes.
"Yara, my darling girl,"
he said, making Yara jump.
"What are you doing here? Papa's office is off limits. You know this, darling."
Yara didn't know what to say. She began to cry. Her father sighed, and grabbing something from his desk, he walked over to the 3rd man. Yara closed her eyes, but she heard the distinct sound of a blade sinking into flesh, sawing through skin, muscle, and arteries, and blood dripping onto the plastic sheet on the floor. She remembered the sound of the naked man's gurgling, blood-clogged final gasps which issued through his severed throat. After it was done, her father crouched down in front of Yara and took her hands in his.
"Open your eyes, Yara darling. You see those men? Those men were our enemies. They owed our family much money and would not pay. So you see, they chose their fate. That is how this world works. Your actions have consequences. Kirill, where are you, boy? Kirill, come in here. Yes, now."
Yara looked over through her tears as Kirill entered timidly and came toward them.
"Kirill, your sister broke the rules. There must be punishment. Watch, Yara. Watch and remember."
Viktor Volkov raised his huge right hand in the air. Yara winced, expecting the blow, but he turned and hit Kirill instead. The slap was hard. It knocked the boy backwards several feet, and when he rose shakily, Yara saw blood dripping from his nostrils and a crack on his lips.
"Your actions have consequences. You understand?"
Yara nodded.
"Good."
Their father had grinned, his golden incisors glinting in his dark mouth.
"They call your papa the Wolf of Leningrad. Did you know that, children? You 2 then are wolf cubs. Ha! Now then, run along, little cubs. Play your games and sharpen your claws. Just not in here. Papa has work to do. This mansion does not pay for itself."
Despite it all, Kirill had smiled at Yara once their father turned his back. A little smile, a bloody smile, and she smiled back. A simple message passed between the twins in that moment of trauma.
"Don't worry, I am here. I will always be here."
Hand in hand, the twins had left the office and hurried up to the bedroom they shared, and Kirill had hummed a Russian lullaby for Yara while she played with a little toy airplane. That was 20 years ago. A lot had changed since then. Their father had continued to rise through the ranks of the crime syndicate. But when things got too hot in London, he had moved the family to the US instead, setting up shop in a major American port city, infamous for its government corruption, rampant organized crime, and even a few notable serial killers. Yara and Kirill had been 16 when they moved across the Atlantic. They hadn't wanted to leave London, but of course, they had no choice. They couldn't disobey their father so directly. The only rebellion available to them was to refuse to take part in the family business. They had another brother too, Maxim, who was older by a decade. Maxim was more than happy to follow in their father's footsteps. He shadowed Viktor Volkov night and day, learning from the infamous wolf, practicing to mimic his cruelty. But Yara and Kirill, they would have none of it. That was until 6 months ago, when Kirill had finally caved to the pressure. Yara had been away at university when she got the news. Kirill had been arrested, caught driving a truckload of human-trafficked girls across the Canadian border. He had been sentenced to 25 years in US federal prison. The whole ordeal had nearly broken Yara. It had crushed her spirit in a way she didn't think possible, tearing the rug out from under her life. She dropped out of school and came back to the city. She had not contacted Kirill once since his arrest and ignored all his calls from the high-security prison. She couldn't stand to hear his voice, and she wished he would stop trying to contact her. More than that, part of her wished Kirill had died instead, shot down by the Border Patrol officers. That would have been easier to accept. Everyone died, and in the Volkovs' family line of work, those deaths were often violent and unexpected. But if she was being honest with herself, which was difficult for Yara, most of the anger she felt wasn't actually directed at Kirill. Kirill was being used, same as always, as a tool to torture Yara. It was the torturer that Yara hated, that she yearned to stop, once and for all. She had imagined it hundreds of times, raising a gun to her father's head, pulling the trigger. Yara was a good shot. Her father had made sure of that. But the wolf was surrounded at all times by an army of good shots, a well-paid and viciously loyal pack. So, what could a young woman, a college dropout, do against the most powerful and notorious gangster in the city? Go to the police? Fat chance. Half the cops were on her father's payroll. He even had FBI agents in his pocket. Go to a rival gang? That wouldn't help much either. Viktor Volkov didn't operate like other gangsters. He respected the other gangs in the area, the Irish, the Triads, and even some of the local smaller gangs. He worked with them all when it was profitable and shared intel about the feds to their mutual advantage. No, if Yara was to bring down Viktor Volkov and his crew, she would have to get creative. A relentless shower of cold, acidic rain poured down upon the city as Yara made her way on foot to the east side butcher shop. She had never been in this neighborhood before, and with every soggy step she took, she was reminded why. This was a hellish place, with an ever-present smog of poverty and drugs and violence hanging in the air on every street corner. The butcher shop itself, when she finally reached it, looked as grungy as she had expected, but the lights were on and a few patrons were moving about behind its grimy front window. Yara stepped inside, shaking her hair like a wet dog and joining the short queue at the counter. Now that she was finally here, putting her plan into action, the potential danger of the undertaking was undeniable. She looked up over the heads of those in line, into the downcast face of the employee behind the counter. Yara had not come in search of sliced meat, but of the services of the one who butchered it. The man was only a few years older than Yara. He was very tall, but slouched, and big-muscled, but not in a showy way. He had the quiet demeanor and bashful eyes of someone who blended in any background, regardless of their size. But if he got a real haircut and stopped scowling 24/7, his face would actually be quite handsome. Yara hadn't expected that. Before long, the other patrons paid and walked out into the rain, leaving Yara alone in the shop with him. She readied herself, trying to relax, desperate to look and sound as natural as possible.
Good evening,
she said brightly, stepping up to the counter. He did not respond. His face was turned toward the front window, staring into the rainy night. Yara cleared her throat.
Hello?
She said, louder this time. He blinked, gaze coming back into focus, and turned to look at her. Yara smiled, waiting for him to speak. Seconds passed. She put her hands on her hips and sighed.
Hello? Are you going to ask me what I want?
What do you want? He asked her, his voice low and somewhat monotone. She considered what angle to take, what attitude to assume. Choosing to counter his indifference with playfulness, she chuckled.
Seems like someone is ready for their shift to be over.
She nodded through the glass countertop at the selection of beef cuts and added,
3 or 4 pounds, please. Some round and some chuck. Thanks.
He nodded.
Okay. I'm making a stew,
she told him.
Solyanka. Do you know what that is?
He shrugged.
A stew?
Yara laughed, the softest, brightest little laugh she could manage.
It's Russian, and it's sweet and sour, so a bit like me.
At first, he did not respond to the subtle flirtation. Then he said,
Funny,
and began to weigh out the meat. Yara hesitated. She had sought after this individual for months, studying police files to sniff him out, hunting down his identity, and finally, befriending him online through a virtual pseudonym. She had planned it all out. But now, standing face to face with the man himself, without the easy anonymity of the internet between them, she felt at a loss for words. She was used to him doing most of the talking, that is, most of the typing, in their encrypted chats online. Now, in person, she couldn't get more than a few syllables out of him at a time. He was bagging the meat now. If she didn't get on with it and didn't find a way to connect, she would find herself back in the rain with 4 pounds of beef she didn't need, and no closer to her goal of bloody retribution.
I know I don't sound Russian. I grew up in London. My name's Yara, by the way. Yara Volkova.
She stood up on her tiptoes and extended her hand toward him. He stopped working and stood, still as an oversized mannequin, his dark eyes fixed on her hand where it hovered over the counter.
You're staring at my hand. You're supposed to shake it.
His gaze moved from her hand down to his own.
My hand is dirty.
Yara tried to think of a witty response.
I don't mind a little blood.
He shook her hand. She almost flinched. His hand was so big, and his skin was so cold. She squeezed the hand to keep her fingers from shaking.
Hello, Yara. My name's Jasper David Race.
And there it was, the name she had worked so hard to discover. The identity police all over the state were trying and failing to discover. One day, Yara was certain that name would be infamous. She pulled back her hand. The imprints of his large fingers were still on her skin, pink against the white, with wet spots from the meat.
The liquid isn't blood,
he said.
It's myoglobin. It's a protein. Interesting,
Yara said. She looked up at him. His eyes were meeting hers now, his posture a little straighter, his expression more relaxed. She felt confident to really go for it.
Oh, did you hear about the dead girl, Jasper?
This threw him off, as she knew it would, but his reaction was actually rather impressive. True, his body froze, fingers hovering over the keyboard at the register, but his expression did not change. And when he spoke, his voice remained casual.
What dead girl? Oh, some sex worker. They found her body by the docks, in a dumpster. They say it's the work of that sundown killer guy. Slasher,
he corrected her.
They call him the Sundown Slasher. Oh, right. Well, I heard that her body was decapitated, and now the girl's family is offering a reward for, get this, her head. Can you believe that? A reward for anyone who finds a human head. Crazy. Yeah, crazy, he said, and she thought she saw the corners of his lips wrinkle in the start of a smile. You gonna pay with cash or card? She held up her credit card. Do you like working here? She asked when she had swiped the card. It's okay. I don't work. Well, not at the moment, she told him. She had decided to make her story as close to reality as possible. It would be much easier to keep the lies straight that way. I was at university, art history major, but I had to drop out earlier this year. Things are a bit complicated right now, with family stuff, you know? What I'd really like to do is become a pilot. Just hop on a little plane whenever I want and fly away. Her voice faded in her throat. Why had she added that detail? She hadn't planned on divulging the little childhood dream. I never really told anyone that before, I don't think. Except my brother, my twin brother, Kirill. He looked at her for a few seconds, then over at the shop door. For an instant, Yara wondered if he was going to lock her in, to close the blinds and do unspeakable things to her body in the back room, with all the tools and machines they must have back there to cut up carcasses. But Jasper only cleared his throat and said, I have to close up the shop now. It's 9:02. Oh, right. She relaxed. She would not be murdered. Not tonight, anyway. She took the bag of beef from him, waved, and walked toward the door. She could sense his eyes following her movement. She stopped and turned, tensing her cheeks to make them blush. Say, Jasper, could I maybe give you my number? He blinked and stood very still. She could practically hear the gears moving in his mind as he ran through the possibilities of why she had said it. Had any girl or woman ever shown romantic interest in him before? Even friendly interest? Probably not. You want to give me your phone number? What other number would I give you? He scratched his head and looked around the shop, confusion and panic in his expression. I just thought maybe I could text you sometime, she said, acting embarrassed. You can give me your phone number, he said, and he picked up a pen. Don't be silly. Here, give me your phone. I'll put it in. Oh, he hesitated. Well, he took out his phone, unlocked it, and held it up. She reached over and grabbed it from his hand. Her heart began to race. Most guys these days are so desperate, she said, creating a contact for herself in his files, then sending herself a message. You use the apps much? I don't see Tinder on here. Good for you. It's a fucking garbage dump. Tech bros in Rolexes and lumberjack douchebags holding up a fish. Why do they think women want to see that they can catch a fish? Anyone can catch a bloody fish. Giggling, she handed the phone back to him. Yeah, I don't know. I already messaged myself hi, so I have your number now too. She shot him another warm smile. Thanks, he said, and though the words sounded strange coming from his mouth, as if he had never said it before, Yara thought he meant it. He was grateful. She waved again, grinning, and walked quickly out the door. As the cold rain pelted down on her again, Yara's smile faded. She jogged down the sidewalk, heart racing. Fuck, that had felt so intense. Had he noticed her nervousness? Probably not. Most men would have only noticed the cleavage she had purposely shown, and the tightness of her jeans, and the fact that she wanted to exchange phone numbers. Then again, this Jasper David Wraith was not like most men. He was a sundown slasher. He was a serial killer with at least a dozen victims, and a whole lot more if his online bragging was true. Oh yes, he could kill,
quick and brutal without leaving any witnesses. That's what Yara needed from him. If only she could control him, guide his huge hands, direct his violent tendencies to fit her needs, Jasper would be her perfect instrument of revenge, her warrior, her personal assassin.
Let the games begin,
she thought to herself, speeding up, running through the rainy darkness. That night, rain pounding on the windows of her expensive flat downtown, Yara tossed and turned on her king-size bed. She slept naked beneath the silk sheet, but even so, was sweating and unable to get comfortable. When at last she drifted off, she dreamed she was a child again. She was outside in a great storm, with thunder groaning and water rising up around her. She would drown. It was all too much. Then hands reached down and lifted her out. Huge hands. Cold hands. The shadowy savior held little Yara against his wide chest and carried her through the storm. When she awoke the next morning and checked her laptop, she was not surprised to find that Jasper David Race, operating under the online pseudonym Blood Butcher 007, had sent her a message in the private chat room last night.
Hey Captain, work was shit. The usual. Going to bed now, TTYL.
She responded under her own pseudonym, Captain Mesty 99, saying, TTYL. She sent the message, knowing that Jasper wouldn't wake up and see it for a few hours. Yara was disappointed that he hadn't told Captain Mesty that he had met a beautiful girl at the shop that evening, that she had given him her number and shown an interest in him. Then a new worry occurred to her. What if Jasper had simply deleted her number as soon as she had left? Maybe even blocked her contact? Fuck, what would she do then? Yara made herself an espresso and tried to enjoy a YouTube video about aviation history, but her knees wouldn't stop bouncing, nor would the aching apprehension in her stomach go away. She kept glancing at her phone, hoping for a message to pop up.
Fuck it,
she finally said, just before 1 p.m, which was when Blood Butcher 007 usually logged in online. She grabbed her phone. She would text him. But what to say?
Hey sexy, you don't happen to be a prolific serial killer, do you? Because that would be really convenient for me.
Chuckling at the thought, Yara remembered the bag of chopped meat sitting untouched in her fridge. Well, she had told him she was going to make a stew with it, hadn't she? Yara Googled images of Solyanka, found a picture that looked homemade, and screenshotted it. With her heart in her throat, Yara texted him the photo of the stew and waited. After only a few seconds, little bouncing ellipses appeared in the text app, indicating that Jasper was typing out a response. The ellipsis vanished, then it reappeared.
Come on,
Yara whined. When it disappeared for a second time, she groaned.
Oh Christ, I'll just ask the wanker out.
She typed,
I'm bored. You working today? Want to hang out?
And hit send. To her surprise, he answered right away.
Where?
She stared at the screen. It had actually worked. Maybe he had been more taken with her than his cold demeanor last night had indicated. Of course, the other possibility was that he was already growing tired of dealing with her. In that case, Yara would probably end up as the next victim of the sundown slasher by supper time. Well, that had always been the risk with this plan. She messaged,
Eastside Park. I can be there in 20 minutes. Meet you at the fountain.
He responded,
Okay.
Yara stood up, feeling the buzz of the caffeine from earlier wearing off, replaced by natural adrenaline. She messaged her driver, Charlie, to meet her outside in 5 minutes, then pulled on jeans and a rather revealing Armani top. Snatching her jacket by the door, she headed down the street. Charlie drove around the corner just as she emerged, parked by the curb, and stepped out. He was an older man, mid-60s, with laugh lines at the corners of his eyes and a kind smile. He tipped his cap to Yara and opened the back door for her.
"Afternoon, Miss Yara,"
he said.
"Hiya, Charlie."
She climbed in and buckled her seatbelt as Charlie shut her door and walked around to the driver's side door. Yara liked Charlie. In fact, with Kirill now out of her life, she supposed Charlie was the closest thing she had to a real friend. That was a little pathetic. Technically, Charlie was an employee of her father's. He was paid to smile at her and make polite conversation when she initiated it. But past all that, Yara knew Charlie was a decent human being. Yara didn't run into a lot of those in her world. Charlie wasn't even really in the game. He was just a driver, loyal of course, so that if the cops or feds ever came poking around, Charlie knew to shrug and say things like,
"No, sir, I didn't see anything, sir. I don't know anything about that, sir. I'm just the driver."
Other than that, Charlie had nothing in common with the Russian gangsters who employed him. He was black, for one thing, and local, having been born and raised in the city. He knew every back road and alley and shortcut in town. He was the only driver Yara liked to use. She had even given permission to his phone to track her locations at all times, which made it easier for him to pick her up. On days where Charlie was busy, say, at a doctor appointment for his wife, or one of his grandkids' football games, Yara preferred to just stay home. She hated being driven by her father's goons, who treated her with a mixture of surly apprehension because of who her father was, and silent but obvious sexual attention because she was young and pretty, and those sort of men thought they deserved to have whatever and whoever they wanted. She hated the way their cold eyes would watch her in the rearview mirror. Charlie wasn't like that. His eyes were kind.
"Where are we going today, Miss Yara?"
he asked, pulling back into the street.
"Eastside Park." "Eastside? Why there?" "I'm, meeting someone."
In the rearview mirror, she saw him nod, but his salt and pepper eyebrows arched curiously.
"Everything all right, ma'am?"
She made herself smile.
"Yes, of course, Charlie. You don't have to worry about me." Well, if I don't, who will?"
Yara didn't have any answer to that. She trusted him to keep her secrets, and thought she might even be able to let Charlie in on the plan, if she wanted to, but she felt an instinctive desire to shield him from the upcoming madness. Charlie was too good, too pure. He wouldn't understand the violence in her heart. Noticing that he was still watching her in the mirror, Yara elected to change the subject.
"So, how about you, Charlie? You got any plans this weekend?"
He turned the car right, heading out of the corporate city center into the dingier neighborhoods to the east.
"Oh, the wife wants to try out this new Korean barbecue place that's just opened up round the corner from us. Do you know about those places? You have to cook your own food. They're at the table. Now that's some grade A bullshit if I've ever heard it."
Yara's smile became genuine as he spoke.
"Make me pay to cook my own food? What's next? Can I tip the waiter extra so they let me wash my own dishes too?"
Yara laughed, and Charlie joined in. She was in high spirits when they pulled up to the park at 1:30.
"I'm not sure how long I'll be. Can you park somewhere nearby and wait? I'll text you when I'm done." "Of course, Miss Yara. Be careful now."
Yara left the car and headed into the park. It wasn't a very nice park. There were no children on swings or slides, no family picnics, no lovers strolling hand in hand. A few people were walking dogs, but even they looked nervous and ready to flee back into their homes as soon as their pets finished their business. Most of those present had clearly come to the park to buy drugs, or else to sell them. She reached the fountain and stopped, hands in her pockets. The fountain was little more than a dribbling pipe in a concrete pool full of dirty water, fallen leaves, and a few condom wrappers.
"Hey,"
said a voice. Yara looked up. Jasper was standing a few feet away, wearing a dark grey trench coat and smelling strongly of Old Spice. She smiled.
"Hey yourself. Want to grab a coffee or something?" I don't drink coffee.
Yara nodded. Had she already known that? Had he mentioned it in his many messages to Captain Metzi 99?
Smart. I'm addicted to the stuff. Unless I have like 3 cups a day, I get headaches. So, are you working today?
He shook his head.
Cool. And what do you do when you're, not working?
He shrugged. Yara wasn't surprised. She knew all about his murderous hobbies, of course, but they weren't the sort of things one admits to in public, even in a shady place like this.
Okay then, I guess we can walk?
Yara turned and headed down a path that encircled the park. Jasper followed, a few steps beside her. She waited for him to talk. The seconds stretched, and she was about to give up and break the silence herself when he said,
So, you live near here?
Yara released a breath, relieved.
Not really. I had my driver take me, but I like it here.
She lied. He nodded.
And what do you do for fun? Oh, the usual. I watch a lot of TV. I spend way too much time doom scrolling Instagram and Reddit.
All that was true, though she left out her other hobby, which was using her father's credit card to buy herself very pretty things. She didn't think someone like him would appreciate hearing that.
I like Reddit too,
he told her.
Dope,
Yara said. Then she winced. Why had she said dope? That was the sort of word she would use as Captain Metzi. She was falling back into her online persona. She had to be real here, or at least a version of her real self.
Yeah, I guess I pretty much just waste as much time as I can these days. Been in a kind of funk. I should probably get on antidepressants or something. It's just, I've had a lot of family drama lately. Well, more than usual, I mean. What's your family like, Jasper? Do you live at home with your parents or what? I live with my aunt. She's my only family. Must be nice. Shit, that sounded rude. I don't mean that it's nice that you don't have a lot of family. I just mean that my family can, be a lot. I've got an older brother, Maxim, total fucking freak. Idolizes our psycho father. Even dresses like him now. It's pathetic. I also have a twin brother. Did I tell you I'm a twin? His name is Kirill. I haven't seen him in a while.
Jasper seemed to be listening, though his gaze stayed on the ground, his expression stony. Yara continued.
My father wanted all of us kids to go into the family business. He does a lot of import-export stuff. Maxim did, of course, but Kirill and I refused from the start. Fuck the family business, Hey, am I talking too much?
Jasper looked up at her. His lips curled into a weird sort of half smile. At least he was trying.
You're not talking too much.
She jabbed him playfully in the arm. They encircled the park, passing by the dog walkers, the drug dealers, the twitching addicts looking for their next fix. Yara did almost all of the talking, but she didn't mind. It was actually kind of nice, just to talk, to be listened to. She told him about her family, about how important Kirill had been to her, about what an asshole their father was.
Oh shit, it's later than I thought,
Yara said, when she finally checked her phone. She had been talking for almost an hour.
I have a family dinner thing later I need to get ready for. It's at one of my father's restaurants.
She texted Charlie to meet her back at the drop-off point, then lowered the phone and smiled up at Jasper. She didn't have to make the smile happen. It's just what her face did in that moment. Natural happiness. What the fuck? She thought to herself. She knew who this man was, the things he did to women, the things he was no doubt thinking about doing to her, even now, and yet, maybe it was the months she had spent messaging him, the way he had bared his soul on the computer screen. Jasper was fucked up in the head, obviously, but also desperately lonely, so disconnected from other people, so lost. Yara knew that feeling. She knew it well. She reached up to his face and used her fingers to push his bangs off his forehead.
"Who cuts your hair, Jasper?"
she asked him. He swallowed.
"I do." I can tell."
She looked into his eyes.
"You have a really handsome face, you know. Maybe I could cut your hair sometime. I'm pretty good. I used to cut Kareel's hair."
She watched his face. He seemed to go through about 20 emotions in the span of a few seconds. He stepped quickly backward from her, stammering.
I hope your family dinner doesn't suck too bad, Yara."
Then he spun around and marched away. No goodbye. He had been too overwhelmed, she knew. He had practically short-circuited at the mere touch of her fingertips. That fact gave Yara a sense of elation, of power, and something else.
"Thanks, see you around,"
she called after Jasper, before heading toward the car, waiting for her at the corner. Blood Butcher 007 finally told Captain Metzi 99 about Yara in the chat room later that night. It was strange, reading about herself in those messages. Jasper was being careful not to make Captain Metzi jealous, which was cute. He downplayed the interactions in his description, but Yara could read between the lines. Jasper liked the girl he had first met in the butcher shop, and later in the park. He was proud of having talked to her and spent time with her, even if he was afraid to say it directly. Yara sent him a surprise Pikachu meme with the caption, "Butcher enjoys himself on a real date." "It wasn't really a date," Jasper typed in response. "But yeah, she's pretty cool, nice figure, real chatty though." Yara read that and shrugged, helping herself to a third glass of wine. "Sounds like you had a good day," she typed. "Yeah, how about you? Do you have any females in your life, Cap?" Yara set down her wine glass, thinking. What should Captain Metzi's answer be? She had come up with a whole backstory and personality for the pseudonym when she first contacted Jasper on the site, but she had never really used it. Online, Jasper was the talkative one. In real life, it turned out, Yara took on that role when they were together. Maybe that's how it should be. They could each be their most authentic self in the arena where they felt the most comfortable. It was a little strange, maybe, but wasn't every relationship. She typed, "Not really," and logged off soon after, telling him she was going to take a shower. Yara stood up, finishing the wine in a long sip before setting the glass on her marble kitchen countertop. In her own head, she had just called what she had with Jasper a relationship. Could that really be what it was? Surely she wasn't that messed up. Yara knew all about the women that fell in love with imprisoned killers, of course, but that was different. Those men were famous. There were documentaries made about them. They were mysterious, misunderstood, notable people. What's more, they had been caught. They were locked up, caged away, unable to murder again. Jasper David Race was free, and he was dangerous. But Yara supposed she was used to the company of dangerous men. When first coming up with this crazy plan, Yara had done her research. She learned that the technical definition of a serial killer was simply someone who had murdered 3 or more people over the course of separate events. By that description, half the men in Yara's life were serial killers. But she knew it was different with Jasper. There must have been an underlying illness in the young man. Something broken in his brain. Something beyond his control, a desperate need. He needed to kill. What was her father's excuse? Viktor Volkov had no needs. They had all been met decades ago. He had money, respect, sex whenever he wanted from a personal harem of young trafficked women. When Yara's father hurt someone, it was because he wanted to do it. They were not the same. Still, Yara decided, leaning against her kitchen counter, the wine making her dizzy. Whatever happened next, Jasper must remain nothing more than an instrument of violence for her tool of revenge, nothing more. Yara and Jasper texted every day that week, several times a day, to the point that neither had much time to log in online and chat as Captain Metzi and Blood Butcher. They met at the park again on Monday, then again on Thursday. Yara had started looking forward to their walks, and whenever one of his texts popped up on her phone, a little butterfly appeared on her stomach and fluttered playfully. When Charlie had driven her back after their walk on Thursday, Yara caught him watching her in the rearview mirror again.
"Everything okay, ma'am?" Charlie asked. "You look far away."
"Just thinking," said Yara. She stared out the window at the derelict East Side buildings, the boarded-up doorways, the shops with bars on their windows. As they drove downtown, garbage heaps gave way to gardens, blocky tenant buildings vanished, and swanky hotels rose up, like pillars of glass and steel holding up the sky.
"Charlie,"
Yara asked, chewing her lip,
"do you think I'm evil?" "Now why would you even ask that, Miss Yara?" "Because,"
Yara said before her voice trailed off. Charlie cleared his throat.
Do you hurt people on purpose?"
Yara shook her head.
"No, but I want to." "What people?"
An image flashed in Yara's mind. Viktor Volkov in one of his fancy suits, her psycho older brother Maxim standing beside him, with a dozen equally cruel men smiling all around them. She imagined red targets on each of their wicked faces. She imagined spraying them with bullets.
"People who deserve it,"
said Yara, spitting the words.
"Well, that doesn't sound like evil to me, Miss Yara. That sounds like justice."
He pulled over in front of her place, and turning in his seat, he winked at her.
"Besides, I'm willing to bet that if it came down to it, in that moment, you wouldn't go through with it. Or if you did, you wouldn't feel good about it. That's not who you are." Maybe."
Yara had considered that possibility. What if she didn't have it in her after all? What if she was not like her father, but more like her mother instead? Miłosiernie sukceswo. That's how Viktor Volkov had once described his late wife to his children. A creature of mercy. He had meant it as an insult. Is that what Yara was, in her heart of hearts? Well, time would tell. Charlie opened the car door for Yara, and she stepped out onto the sidewalk beside her building.
"Thanks, Charlie. I'll see you around."
The next day, she was initiating the next and very important step in her plan. She invited Jasper to come to a family dinner over at Ignatius Kitchen, a Russian restaurant downtown. She thought it might be too much too soon for Jasper, and she half expected him to refuse the invitation, but he responded quickly.
"Okay, what time?"
Yara couldn't remember the last time she had felt so nervous. Getting the call about Kirill's arrest, probably. She had Charlie drop her off in the alley around the back and entered the restaurant through the kitchen, nodding hello to the staff members she passed. She was wearing a tight sky blue Louis Vuitton dress. She hoped Jasper would like it. Tossing her coat to a waiter, she clutched her purse in one hand and rubbed the palm of her other down her thigh nervously. It was a good thing the dress was sleeveless, otherwise the pits would be soaked by now. She was sweating like crazy.
"Give me a shot of vodka, will you?"
she said to the waiter holding her coat. She turned to see who was there for the evening, just in time to watch her father enter the dining room from the front hall. The restaurant went deadly quiet at his arrival, as if he were royalty. Viktor Volkov had a girlfriend on each arm. They looked stoned as fuck, with their flat bellies showing under tight tops, and large hoop earrings that dangled almost to their anorexic shoulders.
"Yaroslava, darling,"
said Viktor, pulling the girlfriends in tow as he approached his daughter. He hardly ever used her full name. Was he feeling especially nostalgic this evening, or was he just messing with her? Yara never knew.
"Have you met Anya and Angel here?"
Yara shrugged.
"I don't know, Papa. Probably. unless you just pulled them off a truck or something.
Victor chuckled, and turning to one of the girls, nuzzled his bearded chin against her tiny nose.
Lovely Anya here looks like you, Yara, don't you think?
The waiter returned with a single shot glass on a platter, which Yara snatched up gratefully. She eyed the girl Anya, who she thought looked about 15 years old, and downed her shot.
I might look like that,
Yara admitted.
if I did heroin for 6 months and ate nothing but ice chips, which doesn't sound too bad right about now. The heroin, I mean, not the ice chips. I'm bloody famished. Can we eat yet?
Victor smiled, his gold incisors glinting in the light of the oil lamps that stood on every table.
Soon, darling. The boys are coming in now.
Sure enough, men in leather jackets and white trainers were pouring into the restaurant, nodding hello to the boss and making their way to the long table in the far corner. Yara had long since given up remembering the names of all the men who worked for her family. Some of them were Volkov cousins, but many others had been picked up throughout the years, mostly from other gangs. Viktor Volkov had always been a collector. He collected soldiers for his personal army and young girlfriends, and various businesses all over the city, his favourite of which was currently Ignatius' Kitchen. The restaurant had practically become his office, the hall from which he held his criminal court. He was king here, the Wolf King untouchable. Yara had watched him flex his power and influence in this dining room many times. She had seen men bring dollies of stacked white bricks of cocaine right through the front doors, in plain view of the patrons, several of which were city officials. In this restaurant, no one could touch Viktor Volkov. That's why it would be all the sweeter for Yara if she could kill him here. The thought brought a smile to her lips, which her father mistook as being for him. He detached a girlfriend from one arm and reached out to cup Yara's chin in his fingers.
My beautiful princessa, I'm still just so glad you're back. It pained me so when you ran off to that university. This is where you belong, darling.
Yara's gaze lowered down to his hand. He wore only one ring, a large silver ring in the shape of a wolf's head, on the index finger of his right hand. It had rubies for eyes. Yara decided then and there that she would take that ring once he was dead, maybe to throw it into the sea, or hand it off to a homeless man on the street outside, or maybe to keep as a secret treasure, a reminder of her conquest. But she was getting ahead of herself. There was so much to do before all that. Father and daughter walked to the long table, and Victor took his usual spot in the center of a padded bench against the wall, Anya and Angel still attached to his arms. Yara had just taken her seat when she turned her head and saw Jasper walk into the restaurant. She stood and rushed over to him. Under his trench coat, the tall man was wearing a new mustard yellow turtleneck sweater. Yara couldn't help but be reminded of Big Bird, and the sweater's tag was still attached on a string from his collar. $29.99. Oops.
You made it. Thank God,
she said, reaching up to snap off the tag.
Sorry,
he mumbled, taking it from her and putting it into his pocket. She shrugged, smiled, and took him by the hand. They hadn't actually held hands yet, but he didn't pull away, and let her lead him to the table. They stood side by side in silence, as Viktor Volkov stared up at Jasper.
So,
her father finally said, one eyelid twitching.
My Yara has brought herself a date, I see. A big American boy. Interesting. And what is your name, boy?
Jasper cleared his throat. He wasn't looking up to meet Victor's eyes. Yara held her breath.
My name is Jasper David Race. Jasper David Race? Why do you say it like that? It sounds like John Wilkes Booth or Lee Harvey Oswald, no?
The men at the table laughed. Shit! Why did her father have to make those references in particular? Why not James Earl Jones or Olivia Newton-John? Anyone that wasn't a serial killer? He couldn't know, could he? No, of course not. Yara was just being silly. She brought her focus back to the present. Having introduced himself, her father now said,
"Sit, young lovers. Have some vodka."
and the men at the table adjusted their chairs to make room. Jasper sat, eyes downcast, and mumbled,
"We're not lovers." "What's that?"
asked Victor.
"He said we're not lovers, yet,"
said Yara, wishing Jasper had picked just about anything else to say in that moment. She could feel herself blushing. Her father grinned.
"Not lovers? Why not? You're not one of those rainbow fairies, are you, boy? Or is it my Yara? Is there something wrong with my daughter?"
"Stop it, Papa. Jasper's feeling attacked," said Yara firmly.
"If I attacked this tall boy, then he would feel it."
Yara's brother Maxim was sitting to their right, his dark eyes burrowing into Yara and Jasper, and he now stood up from his chair and poured each of them a shot of vodka.
"I don't want to drink this,"
said Jasper. Her father scowled.
"I don't care what you want. That is the finest vodka. We bring it over from the motherland. I have barrels and barrels in the storerooms beneath us. It is desired all over the world."
"Papa, he doesn't want vodka," snapped Yara. Her father looked from her to Maxim.
"Maxim, your sister's new friend is not accepting our hospitality. What can we do about that, do you think?"
Yara groaned in the back of her throat. She had brought Jasper here so that he could see firsthand how awful her family was, thinking it would be easier to convince him to kill them later. But her father and brother were playing their roles a little too well. They might drive Jasper away before he could be useful, or worse, provoke him here and now, leading to a fight in which Jasper would no doubt end up with a bullet in his head. She watched as Maxim picked up Jasper's shot glass in a fist and brought it up towards Jasper's mouth. "Don't react," she prayed, hoping against hope that Jasper would keep his cool. However, he didn't. Jasper reacted. It happened fast, so fast that Yara blinked and nearly missed it. One moment, Jasper was a hunched statue. The next, he grabbed a silver-plated fork beside his plate and stabbed it up into Maxim's hand. Maxim screamed and stumbled backward. Yara gasped, eyes wide, as the gangsters around the table all reached for their sidearms, and Maxim withdrew one of the curved knives he loved so much. She looked to her father, begging him with her eyes to stop it, to stop them. Victor met her gaze, held it for the briefest of moments, then he shouted,
"Niet,"
and everyone at the table froze.
"Maxim,"
said their father calmly,
"go to the kitchen and wrap up your hand. The rest of you, relax. If the boy doesn't want vodka, we will get him something else to drink."
Jasper ordered a green tea. Yara sighed. The world seemed to fade away in her mind after that, the colors of the restaurant growing mute, the sounds becoming strange. She listened, only picking up half the words in her disassociated madness. She had thought she was being so clever, thought she could beat these men at their own game. Now, she felt like a fool, like a child in over her head. Her father was still talking to Jasper, mocking him with not-so-subtle threats.
"They call me the Wolf, and they call son Maxim here the Claw."
Then regaling Jasper with the tales of Yara's old boyfriends. It was humiliating.
"One of her boyfriends was even a police officer. Ha!"
Yara groaned, thinking about that disaster. Officer Stash Connors. She had thought he was a nice guy and hoped to use him against her family, but then he turned out to be on her father's payroll all along. Talk about an abject failure. She just hoped this plan wouldn't end so badly. Yara was shaken out of her musings by the noisy cracking of a walnut in her father's muscular hand. She looked over at him.
"They can be crushed,"
Victor was saying. He must be talking about balls again. Why did men, especially homophobic asshole men, always talk so much about their balls?
That is what I will do to your balls. I will crush them into jelly within your hairy sack if you harm one golden hair on my Yara's head.
Jasper met Victor's eyes now, white, hot hatred on his face. That pleased Yara very much. It meant this might be working after all.
And how many hairs on her head have you harmed?
Jasper asked. Several men, including Maxim, looked at Yara. She closed her eyes. Her father sighed.
None, actually. I have never hit my daughter in all her life.
That, said Yara, clearing her throat and opening her eyes again,
is technically true, but only because every time you got angry with me, you hit Kirill instead. You beat him for my sins and made me watch, because you knew, Papa, that would hurt me more than anything else.
Victor grinned.
True. Has she told you about Kirill yet?
And her father told Jasper what she had not, about her twin brother's betrayal of her, about how he started working for Victor and gotten caught. Yara looked up.
Great story, Daddy-o,
she said in a mock American accent. Her father laughed.
My Yara can be a very sarcastic bitch, if you didn't know that already. But I love her, and she loves me. She also hates me, of course. I think that's what family is. Love and hate so closely intertwined that you can't see the difference between the feelings. What do you think?
Yara was just about ready to storm out, but Jasper beat her to it. Taking a sip of tea, he scooted back his chair and stood.
I'm going to leave now,
he said. Yara grabbed her purse and stood up next to him.
Good idea. We're done here.
She started to move away from the table, but Victor wasn't quite done yet.
You think you can stab my son with a fork and just walk away? Well, maybe you can tonight, but only because I allow it. The choice to let you live or not, that is my choice. And that is power.
Yara looked at Jasper's face. Was he trying not to smile? His expression, it mirrored that of her father's. Two beasts staring each other down.
You know, for the first time this evening, I agree with you, Mr. Volkov.
Fuck, she grunted once they were on the sidewalk. A lot had happened in there. There was a ton she needed to process.
Should I not have stabbed your brother?
Jasper asked her.
What? Oh, fuck, Maxim. You know how many times I've wanted to stab that fucking wanker? But no, you probably shouldn't have done that. Or maybe, I don't know. It's a lot. I'm trying to figure it out.
He stepped toward her, but she held up a hand.
Just go home, Jasper. I'll text you in the morning, okay?
Jasper stiffened but said,
okay.
And as was usual for him, he turned and departed without any goodbye. Yara put her head in her hands, groaning. Didn't they say that when kids grew up, they looked for partners like their own parents? The thought of it was icky, but damn, seeing them like that, staring across the table, she had sensed that animalistic kinship between the two men. The one, a Russian wolf, with keen eyes and a vicious bite. The other, an American grizzly, round shoulders, thick neck, hands like bloody great paws. Jasper's fingers were especially massive. Yara had noticed that, more than once. She imagined each finger with little abs, flexing as he tore apart some animal carcass in the shop. The mental image frightened her, disgusted her, yet it also made her excited, weak in the knees, dry in the mouth. She pulled out her phone and texted Charlie, then stood shivering by the road. Charlie arrived a few minutes later, but when he opened the door for her, she hesitated.
Actually, I think I'll walk home tonight, she said. Sorry, Charlie.
Charlie shut the door but took a step toward her.
Miss Yara, I don't think that's a good idea. It isn't safe this time of night. Why don't you just get in the car and... Oh, fuck off, Charlie.
She snapped at him.
I said I wanted to bloody walk. I need to clear my head. You work for me, remember?
He stopped, slid his hands into his pockets and nodded. But frown lines appeared between his eyes, and Yara could see how hurt he was. She sucked in a breath of night air.
I'm gonna walk. Good night, Charlie.
She turned and set off down the sidewalk, hugging her bare arms around her chest. She had forgotten her coat inside the restaurant. Fuck. Yara moved fast, her feet pounding the pavement with each angry step, trying to get her buzzing brain to shut up, her heart to stop racing. She started to regret everything, the whole plan. She wished she could go back and start over, or else hop on a plane and fly herself far, far from here. But that was all fantasy. This was reality, harsh and cold and inescapable. She took a back alley that served as a shortcut to her building, but she was halfway down before she realized the streetlights here were off. The road was eerily quiet, the shadows dark and deep. Something tugged on her right shoulder. Yara gasped, stumbling sideways and turning her head. Part of her expected to see her father, eyes glinting wickedly, or else Jasper, one long arm seizing her. But no, it was just some teenager. He was pulling on Yara's purse. He was just some local kid out to steal a few bucks. But he had picked the wrong woman on the wrong night to mug. Anger flared in Yara's chest. She grabbed the purse in both hands and leaned back, intent on stopping the theft. The purse strap snapped. The teenager fell backward onto his tailbone with a grunt. Yara grinned, breathing hard. But in that instant, she saw that he wasn't working alone. Another teenage boy was marching up from behind her, a pistol in his hand, aimed sideways in the darkness.
Oh, it's gonna be like that, bitch,
he snarled at her. The barrel of the pistol came into sharp focus in Yara's vision. She panicked, freezing in place, breath catching in her throat. Fear engulfed her like a fog. But then, through the fear, she heard footsteps. Someone was running on the pavement, and she knew who was coming for her. A great shadow loomed suddenly beside her, and as the first boy scrambled to his feet, huge hands snatched him by the head, lifted him high into the air, and twisted. Jasper dropped the dead teenager onto the pavement, and moving with an athletic grace and a speed she hadn't imagined possible, the giant man sprang at the second mugger, snatched the gun from his head, and smashed him across the face with it. Even as the boy collapsed onto his back with a grunt, Yara saw, silhouetted by distant traffic lights, the trench-coated figure of the sundown slasher. Raising his long right arm, the gun held like a hammer in his fist, he brought it down. He straightened up, breathing hard, and turned to face Yara. Jasper David Race. Her Jasper, her dark guardian. She watched as he picked up their bodies, carrying them easily, as if they weighed nothing, and tossed them into a dumpster by the road. Holy shit, Yara thought. Holy shit. She had known violence all her life, the threat of it, the horror of it, the stench of death in a room. But this was something different. Violence in the service of protection. Protection for Yara. Jasper walked back up to her. She burst into tears and fell against his chest, swinging her arms around him and squeezing. She tried to speak, to thank him, but she couldn't stop her crying, so she held him as tight as she could. After a moment, he lay his hands across her back and hugged her too.
Thank you,
she finally managed to whisper.
I thought I was about to die, but then I knew, somehow, even before you appeared, that you'd save me. I knew it would be you. No one else could do it. Only you.
She took a sharp breath in, inhaling his smell, and backed away shakily.
You saved me,
she said, staring up at him. He looked like he was still processing their embrace, but he didn't look upset, rather amazed. Yara swallowed. This was it. She would never get a better chance.
And now, I need to ask you to do it again. I need your help.
Jasper blinked and released a heavy breath.
What do you need? I need...
Yara began, then she stopped. It had never been a part of her plan to tell him just how much she knew, but as she stood there, in the presence of her savior, she felt compelled to come clean, to tell the truth.
I need the help of the sundown slasher.
Her words reached his ears, and a moment later, his brain. Jasper's expression changed, the inner corners of his eyebrows sinking, his mouth becoming a tight, angry line.
What the fuck did you just say? Now, Jasper, I need you to hear me out, please,
she said, trying to keep her voice as calm as possible.
Yes, I do know who you are, okay? I knew it. Oh, you fucking bitch. I knew it. No, wait,
she pleaded, holding up a hand as he moved toward her, his eyes wild.
Let me explain.
He pulled a knife from his pocket.
How do you know? My ex, okay? The cop. I still have his login. I have studied everything the police have on the sundown slasher. Every clue, every case. And I figured it out. But don't worry. The cops are idiots. Their theories are way off. You're not even on their suspect list.
He grabbed her, bringing the knife up to her throat. She could feel its razor-sharp blade against her skin.
If they couldn't find me, how the fuck could you?
Yara swallowed, meeting his eyes.
Because I am different, okay? I might not like it, but I do have the blood of the wolf in my veins. I was raised in a world of violent men, baptized in their cruelty. I can sniff out a killer when I need to. It's how I found you. It's why I went to your shop. I fucking knew it. You lied to me. You were just using me. Jasper,
she said, putting all her emotions, her confusion and her passion into the same name.
Wake up. Everyone uses everyone. That's how this fucking world works. And no, I didn't lie, exactly. I just didn't tell you everything. God knows you didn't tell me everything either.
Jasper moved his head a few inches backward, considering her words.
But think about this. I chose you, Jasper. Out of all the men in the city, all the men in the world, I tracked you down because you are the one I want, the one I need.
He moved forward again, the blade of his knife pushing against her.
And the truth is, my truth is that
Yara had to be honest with him. She had to be honest with herself. She looked into his eyes.
I like you, Jasper.
Liar.
No, truly. I wish honestly that it was a lie, because I know it's fucked up. I know it's toxic as fuck, but I feel... What?
She exhaled and, raising a hand, pushed his knife hand slowly away from her.
I feel safe when I'm with you. I feel seen.
Jasper took a step back, lowering the blade. She straightened up. It was now or never.
Oh, I'm going to ask again for your help, with one thing. And after that, honestly, you can kill me if you still want to. Seriously, I really don't give a fuck anymore. But only after. After what, Yara? What do you want me to do?
She took a deep breath and stepped toward him, reaching up to hold his face gently with her fingertips. His skin was freshly shaven, smooth, cold.
Now you've seen what they're like, my family. I want you to help me kill them. All of them and their associates. The wolf, the claw, the whole bloody pack. My father last of all. He must see his empire burn. And then I'll kill him.
She stretched up on her tiptoes, bringing her face close to his and closing her eyes.
I want you to help me end the Volkov family. Will you do that for me, Jasper?
She kissed him. His lips were chapped. She could taste his green tea from dinner. She felt Jasper's hands wrapping slowly around her again, lifting her up, pulling her body against his. The kiss lingered, the moment stretching. The kiss was meant to be a performance, surely. Yara was just acting, wasn't she? A quick peck on the lips to excite him. But then why was her tongue in his mouth? Why was she melting against his chest, her limbs weak, her heart pounding, her body molding against his? Yara had not lied. She had not needed to lie. She was falling for him, falling for a killer, and she hadn't felt so happy in a very long time. The day of reckoning had finally arrived, and Yara Volkova, perhaps understandably, was experiencing mixed emotions. There was fear, which was only logical. Chances were Yara would be dead by nightfall, her body punched through by multiple bullets. She also felt a sense of righteousness at the prospect of finally getting payback against her monster of a father after all of these years. And then there was that other feeling, a sort of girlish giddiness, she had to admit, at the idea of spending the day with Jasper David Wraith, fighting side by side with a towering sundown slasher. Jasper, under his username BloodButcher007, had just messaged Yara online, though he didn't know it. The messages were directed at her online persona, Captain Metzi99. He was telling Captain Metzi about one of his favorite historic killers, the most prolific killer ever, according to Jasper, a Soviet executioner who had personally killed tens of thousands of people. No doubt, Jasper found the story to be aspirational, but Yara wasn't especially impressed. Quantity did not equal quality. She had been tempted to respond to his message with a true story of a different mid-century Soviet killer, one Yara herself admired. Lyudmila Pavlichenko had been a sniper during the siege of Odessa and had shot dead 309 Nazis during the fighting. Now that was badass, but Yara feared it would look suspicious if Captain Metzi revealed specific knowledge about a historic woman, or as the captain would call her, a female, so she didn't bother typing about it. Yara shut her laptop and turned to the problem of what she would wear for the day's killing spree. She needed nondescript clothing that would not draw attention. The garments also needed to be action-ready. Yara foresaw various daring escapes in the coming hours, dashing from the crime scenes and leaping into Jasper's car. She ended up going with Balenciaga running shoes and a grey Hugo Boss tracksuit. There was still the matter of disguising her face, however. Yara had meant to procure some sort of mask, but had been so thrown off by the unexpected situationship with Jasper that she still hadn't gotten around to it. She did, however, find a woolen ski mask in the top of her hall closet. The only trouble was, it was bright pink and glittery. Oh well. She would go out full-blown femme fatale, like proud Lyudmila Pavlichenko, taking villains out one by one, and looking damn good while doing it. Yara's phone dinged, and she grabbed it excitedly, expecting to hear from Jasper. But the text was from Charlie, her ever-loyal driver. As always, Charlie's message was very official-looking and extremely polite.
Good morning, Miss Yara. Are you well? I just read about 2 bodies found downtown, near 9th Street. You walked by there the other night, so it has me worried. Please let me know that you are all right. Thank you, Charles.
Yara experienced a hot pang of guilt in her stomach, yet another feeling she would have to contend with. The last time she had been face to face with a sweet, older man was a few nights earlier, in front of her father's restaurant, and she had yelled at him to fuck off. Now here he was, checking in on her. After a minute's consideration, she responded with a simple,
I'm fine. Thanks for checking in.
Realizing that she would need to meet Jasper before too long, she sent Charlie a second message.
Need another ride to Eastside Park. Be here in 10?
Charlie responded in seconds.
Of course, ma'am. I will see you soon.
Thank you, Charles. Yara was silent for most of the drive from her flat to the park, sitting in the back seat with her cheek against the cool glass of the car window, thinking hard. In the rearview mirror, Charlie checked in on her from time to time, she noticed, so she kept a half smile on her lips, reassuring him that all was well. And all was well, right? Or at least, as well as could be expected. Their plan was set and simple enough. They would hit up a number of company spots around town, killing as many of the upper-rank gangsters as they could, before ending with her father and Maxim. Jasper was bringing his weapons, not to mention his considerable skill and experience. Yara was bringing more than 20 years of pent-up trauma, all her hurt, all the anger at her father, at Maxim, even at Kirill. For the first time since her beloved twin brother's arrest, Yara was glad he was far away from her. She wouldn't have had the heart to shoot Kirill, even after what he did, betraying her and going to work with their father. In fact, Yara still wasn't sure if she could kill anyone. Charlie didn't think so. He had practically said so the day before.
If it came down to it, he had said, in that moment, you wouldn't go through with it. Or if you did, you wouldn't feel good about it. That's not who you are.
Maybe he was right, but Yara didn't think so. She felt ready to kill. She had killed so many times, in her imagination, in her dreams. When the car pulled up outside Eastside Park, Yara opened her door before Charlie had the time to come around and do it for her. But as she stepped out, he came outside anyway.
Miss Yara,
he told her, his arms crossed.
Be careful, okay? I couldn't stand if anything happened to you. You know that, right?
Charlie knew something was up. He wasn't stupid. Yara flashed him a smile, but tears came unbidden into her eyes. She really liked Charlie, and whether she lived through the day and had to flee town or was killed in the fighting, she would never see him again.
You don't have to worry about me, Charlie,
she said, wiping her eyes.
And yet, I do.
He turned and opened the driver's side door.
I'll be around town today, ma'am. Give me a ring if you need a ride, and I'll be there in a jiffy.
She waved to him, and he drove off. Yara turned and headed along the edge of the park to where she was meeting Jasper. He pulled up a few minutes later in his Lincoln Continental, rolling down his window.
Hey yourself, she said. Are you okay?
He asked her as she climbed into the passenger seat. She didn't answer, but looked around the car.
Did you not bring weapons?
Of course I did. I have my blades.
He shifted aside his trench coat to show sheathed knives and cleavers strapped to his chest and his belt. Yara resisted the urge to groan.
No guns, Jasper.
I don't usually use guns.
What about the one you took from the mugger?
I threw it in the bay.
Well, Yara guessed that's what she got for bringing a butcher to a Mafia fight.
Let's go, I guess. You know, they'll have guns, Jasper. Don't you ever use bigger weapons?
Jasper pulled into the road.
Yes, I use my car. A car isn't a weapon. Of course it is. Traffic fatalities in the US account for 40,000 deaths a year. The numbers are comparable to those of firearm fatalities. Right. Turn left here. We need to head south. We're starting with my Aunt Zoya.
Why her?
Because she's the smartest one. If anyone figures out what we're doing, it'll be her.
Will she be protected?
Memories flashed through Yara's mind. She had visited Zoya so many times over the years, sitting at her kitchen table, sandwiched between two of her male cousins. Zoya's boys had always been perverts.
A couple of her sons might be there,
she admitted, excited at the thought of their deaths.
But she'll let us in, no problem. We just have to be quick and not let anyone leave that house alive.
Jasper nodded.
No witnesses. Got it.
Yara looked at him, slouched over the steering wheel, face set and eyes fixed on the road ahead. If nothing else, she knew that he was good at never leaving a witness. Yara put on her pink ski mask as they pulled into the parking lot 15 minutes later. Beside her, Jasper covered the lower half of his face with a fleece neck warmer. They stepped from the car. Yara could hear her heartbeat in her ears. She felt dizzy with anticipation as they ascended 2 flights of stairs and stood, side by side, in front of her aunt's door. She took a deep breath. The morning air was cold and burned her throat. She felt Jasper's hand land lightly on her shoulder.
It's going to be fine, Yara. I'm very good at what I do.
She nodded at him.
Yeah, I know. Are you ready?
Jasper drew a long hunting knife from his belt and flattened himself just beside the door. Yara pulled off her ski mask. She knocked. She remembered the first time she had come here, after they moved to America. She had been 16. Aunt Zoya had already lived here for a decade. Yara's cousins, Pasha and Ivan, were both a few years younger than her. While eating cabbage pastries in the kitchen, Ivan had tried to sneakily take an upskirt picture of Yara under the table, but the phone's flash had gone off. The boys had thought it was very funny. Yara had not. She heard the locks clicking, and the door opened a few inches. Yara composed herself and smiled through the gap.
Hey, Pasha, she said to her cousin. Is your mother here? I need to...
Jasper shoved suddenly past her, slamming the door inward and snatching a hand across Pasha's mouth. Yara barely had time to blink before Jasper drove the blade of his hunting knife across Pasha's neck and tackled him, almost silently, onto the hall carpet. Jasper turned back to look at her. She stood rooted in place on the landing.
What? You said to be quick,
Jasper whispered. Yara swallowed.
Right, yeah, okay.
Jasper stepped over the bleeding body and into the hall. Yara followed, quietly shutting the door behind her, and avoided looking down at the feebly twitching form of Pasha. She moved around Jasper to be in front. She knew the layout of the flat. Zoya was most likely in the kitchen, ahead and to the left.
Aunt Zoya,
Yara called down the hall.
It's Yara. Pasha let me in. Are you here?
She turned the corner, and for a brief moment saw Zoya seated behind the kitchen table. Then there was a bang, and Yara felt the hot wind of a bullet whiz past her right ear. Jasper's hand seized her and yanked her backward into the hall. She landed at his feet, eyes wide.
It's Zoya, she gasped. How did you figure out what's happening so quickly? I told you, she's smart.
From the kitchen, Zoya fired again. That bullet hit one of the many golden icons on the wall, striking the right eye of a painted Jesus. Jasper stepped over Yara, grabbing another heavy icon off the wall and holding it up like a shield. He charged around the corner into the kitchen. Yara winced, hearing another gunshot, then a great crash, then silence. She pulled herself to her feet and slowly craned her neck to look around the doorframe. Jasper was still on his feet. She entered the kitchen. The table had been smashed in two, with Zoya's small pistol and the icon sitting among the wreckage of the breakfast and shattered dishes on the floor. Aunt Zoya was still sitting in her chair, her head upright, her skull skewered on Jasper's blade. He pulled the knife free. Zoya's head flopped forward onto her chest. Well, thought Yara, that's that. There's no going back now. She walked over and turned off the stove, which had a soup simmering in a pot over the flame. It smelled like childhood to Yara.
We should go,
she said, kneeling and picking up Zoya's revolver. They headed toward the front door, but Yara stopped halfway down the hall, the hairs on her neck standing suddenly on end.
What?
Asked Jasper. She put a finger to her lips and nodded toward the closed bathroom door of the hall. She thought she had heard a soft whimpering through the door. Her cousin Ivan must be in there. Yara lifted up the revolver and was annoyed to see that her hand was shaking. Jasper gave her a reassuring nod, then grabbed the bathroom's doorknob. It was locked. He threw his huge shoulder against the door and it burst open. As Jasper stepped inside, Yara spun around the doorframe, gun raised, aiming past Jasper's elbow. Her cousin was seated on the toilet in the corner, sweatpants around his ankles, teeth bared in an ape-like show of panicked submission. Yara shot him in the head. She waited, for the weight of her action to crash down upon her conscience, for the shame of it to overwhelm her.
I've never done that before,
she heard herself say.
What do you feel?
She realized the answer, and turning to Jasper, she grinned.
Nothing.
The next gangster into whose head Yara fired her revolver, some 90 minutes later, died with a satisfying little cry of oomph, collapsing backward over his desk, bits of skull and brain showering the wall behind him. His name had been Mikhail Rykov, and Yara knew that he was one of her father's most trusted associates. She also knew that Rykov had also burned down a whole block of flats, with a dozen families sleeping inside, simply to secure the property of the Volkovs to purchase. Grade A bastard. As his broken, bleeding body slid off the desk at Yara's feet, she could have laughed. She felt that good. She turned to Jasper, who came in across the hall, where he had seen to it that 3 more henchmen now lay dead in a heap. Breathing in the sharp, metallic odor of gunpowder, Yara stretched up on her tiptoes, and shoving down Jasper's mask, she kissed him. So far, he had been right. He hadn't needed a gun. Their first stop, after taking out Aunt Zoya and her boys, was to head over to the shipping offices. They had found 4 of Victor's men playing poker, and it had taken Jasper less than 30 seconds to kill all of them. He moved like an athlete, the blades an extension of his long, muscular arms. After that, they had grabbed coffee and a bite to eat, then headed west to Rykov's place. With him dead, news would probably spread to the operation at large that someone was attacking them. Yara was surprised she hadn't gotten any text yet. She knew her father would assume a rival gang was declaring war, so she didn't think they'd be on the lookout for herself or Jasper. But still, they had to be careful. Breaking away from the kiss, Yara pulled Jasper by the hand back to the car. They drove around the corner to a 24-hour gym that operated as a cover for human trafficking. Parking around the back, they found an employee on a smoke break outside a back door. Jasper cut off his head. It was actually really impressive. He had done it with his meat cleaver, in 2 well-aimed swings. Once inside the gym's back office, Jasper killed 2 more henchmen. Meanwhile, Yara took Zoya's revolver and headed upstairs, where she knew they usually kept young women smuggled in from Eastern Europe. The walls up there were padded and soundproofed to stop any screaming from being heard in the gym below. Yara hoped it would also mute gunshots. She pulled off her ski mask and pocketed the gun as she came around the corner to a large reinforced door. There was a camera above the door. Yara knocked, then looked up at the camera. A few seconds later, a man opened the door to let her in. Yara didn't recognize him. She shot him twice in the chest. Stepping inside, around the body, she checked to see how many bullets were left in her aunt's gun. There were none. Well, shit. She bent and checked the guard's body. He had a heavy black pistol. She took it and moved into the next room, where she found 4 young women sitting on a couch in front of a TV. One of them looked at Yara sleepily. Yara nodded hello to the woman, who blinked back, confused. Feeling like a guardian angel herself, Yara left the doors open for the women's escape, or eventual rescue, and went down to find Jasper. He was smashing in a man's skull with an enormous dumbbell. "Ready?" she asked. He set down the weight, panting slightly, and nodded. Yara cocked her head. Exercise was a good look on the sundown slasher. Back on the road, she got a text from Maxim. alerting her that someone in the organization had double-crossed them and were on a rampage. He seemed panicked, which pleased Yara very much. Now on higher alert, they made one more stop, up north this time, at the home of Yara's other cousin, Sasha, whom she shot 3 times with her newly acquired pistol. She liked that gun. The noise was more muted, and there was less kickback than with the revolver.
I need a wee and a change of clothes. This tracksuit is soaked in blood and sweat,
Yara told Jasper, climbing back into the Lincoln.
Can we swing by my place? It's on 8th. Then we can reassess and head back out.
Jasper shrugged, pulled back into traffic, and headed downtown. Yara hadn't realized how tense her muscles had become throughout the day. She really should have stretched that morning. She'd kissed Jasper on the cheek and left him standing in her open living room, looking rather sheepish and out of place in a spacious penthouse, then moved down to the hall to her bathroom. Once inside, the automatic lights came on and she stood for a minute, staring at herself in the mirror. Yara didn't look like the same young woman who had left the flat this morning. She was a soldier now, a righteous crusader, blood-stained and experienced. She felt old, standing there, but in a good way. The next time her father saw her, if he called her his precious little darling girl or whatever, he would look like such a fool. And then she would shoot him in his fat, foolish face and watch the life drain from his dark eyes. There was nothing he could call her anymore to bother her. She was too strong now, untouchable. As she sat on the toilet, her phone dinged.
Well, speak of the devil,
she mumbled, seeing a message from her father. She answered his text, flushed, and moved to the sink to wash her hands.
My father just texted,
Yara called out to Jasper.
He's worried about me, and he says he sent Maxim out to find me. I told him I left town already, with friends this morning. He told me not to come back to town until he says otherwise.
She shut off the tap and walked back into the hall.
Oh, and they know about the Lincoln, Jasper. They're searching for your car. We'll need to change rides to...
As she came around the corner into the living room, she saw Jasper first, standing to her right, tense with his hands held out to either side, like a cowboy in a standoff, about to draw. A moment later, a second man came into her view, on her left. Maxim. He must have let himself into her apartment. Fuck. Her older brother stood tensed as a cornered dog, one of his curved knives held out in each hand. Yara's sneakers squeaked to a stop on the hardwood floor. Maxim looked over at her. Her mind worked fast. Was there something she could say to fix this? How much did Maxim know already? What did he think was happening here? If he had his knives out, did that mean he knew that Jasper was responsible for the killings? Oh shit. Oh shit. He had heard her in the bathroom. He knew everything.
Now I get it,
Maxim sneered, his eyes boring into hers.
I fucking told him, Yara, you fucking bitch. I told Papa you were planning something big.
He stepped toward her, raising one knife, his face contorted with rage.
Wait!
Yara screamed, clasping her eyes shut in panic. She heard his footsteps, his snarl, then the sound of a knife spinning through the air. Something pricked her cheek, and she shuddered. But a moment later, a body thudded to the floor. She opened her eyes. Maxim lay twitching on the floor against the wall, the handle of Jasper's hunting knife protruding from his skull, just behind his right ear.
You okay?
Jasper asked. Yara swallowed. Lifting a foot, she pressed it against Maxim's cheek and pushed. A tremble went through his body, and from his bloody mouth, a little groan. Yara leaned down and pulled the knife out of his skull. He stopped moving.
Fucking wanker,
she said. That was all the eulogy Maxim deserved. She handed the knife back to Jasper, who was staring at a spot just below Yara's right eye. She noticed the little twinge of pain there now. Maxim's blade must have nicked her. He had come so close to killing her. Jasper bent over Yara, bringing his mouth to the cut on her cheek, his lips pressed down upon her skin. She felt Jasper's tongue reach out from his mouth, its tip moving across her cheek. When he backed away, she could see some of her blood shining on his mouth. Her lips parted then, and she sucked in a raspy breath. If time had been on their side, Yara would have pounced on Jasper there and then, thrown her legs around him, grabbed his hair in her fists, and tackled him onto the hardwood floor. She would have rode his muscled virgin's body right there in the living room, next to her brother's corpse. But alas, time was short, and Viktor Volkov still didn't have a bullet in his brain. As Jasper cleaned his knife and took Maxim's blades as well, Yara crouched and searched for her brother's car key fob in his pockets. He would have taken his new Rolls-Royce here tonight. Maxim wouldn't shut up about that bloody car. He would have hated for anyone else to drive it. That gave Yara a fresh wave of pleasure as they left her flat, key fob in hand.
Where do you think your dad is now?
Jasper asked as he reversed the Rolls-Royce Phantom 8 out of the parking spot.
Well, he could be with the foot soldiers at the dock, or maybe in his mansion north of town. But if I had to guess, I bet he's over at the restaurant on 10th, Ignatius Kitchen, sitting on top of his precious fucking vodka barrels.
She put on her seatbelt. The restaurant wasn't very far. In a few minutes, it would be all over, one way or another.
We might die, you know,
said Yara, now pulling on her ski mask. Jasper shrugged, accelerating around a curve, the Phantom's engine roaring. He really was a good driver, focused and intuitive. He had bragged about that to Yara. No, that wasn't right. He had said it to Captain Metzi. Yeah, she still had to keep those personas separate. She was forgetting. It was dusk, and the sky was bloody red as they turned onto 8th Street, wheels squealing, other cars honking. Up ahead, on the right, the windows of her father's restaurant shone golden in the evening light, and several black SUVs stood idle in the street out front. Yara sat up. There were 10 guards outside the doors, each armed, she knew, and ready to open fire.
Hold on,
shouted Jasper, jerking the wheel, sending the car lurching over the curb and rocketing along the sidewalk. The guards looked over, reached under their jackets, and were slammed into by the speeding car, like pins in a bowling alley. Bodies in leather flew over and under the car, cracking the windscreen and making the whole car bounce like a thrill ride. Yara screamed, a cry of nervous energy. Jasper slammed on the brakes and the wheels screeched to a stop. He switched the car into reverse. Yara looked out her window and saw, framed in the side view mirror, one of her father's goons struggling to get to his feet, pistol in hand. The car reversed over him, and the others with satisfying, tumbling crunches, then spun to the left, off the sidewalk. They hit something by the road, and a gush of water suddenly sprayed over the roof of the car and streamed onto the restaurant's windows.
I think I hit a fire hydrant,
said Jasper, switching the car back into drive. 2 henchmen leaped out the restaurant's double doors, guns raised. Yara felt Jasper's right hand grab the back of her head and push her down behind the dashboard as bullets struck the car. He drove forward, lurching the car back into the sidewalk. Yara heard bodies hit the bonnet and looked up just as one man slammed through the windscreen, his head hanging between her and Jasper. Jasper stabbed him through the eye. Hands shaking, Yara opened her door and stumbled out into the night air. The scene was chaos, people everywhere, running and screaming. She looked at the crashed car, which now blocked the entrance to the restaurant. Jasper jumped onto the bonnet to get to the doors. She did too, grunting. She spied one of the dead guards' guns and picked it up. It was one of those, what do you call them, submachine guns. a pistol augmented for automatic fire with an extra-long magazine. She held it up, aiming ahead of them as Jasper kicked in one of the restaurant's doors. A guard inside raised his weapon. Yara shot at him with a quick burst. The gun jerked in her hand, firing the last 2 bullets into the ceiling, but the first bullets found their mark. They both walked down into the hall. Jasper threw his hunting knife into another gangster racing in from the dining room, then pulled out Maxim's curved blades. 2 women emerged next, trying to flee. Yara thought she knew them, or at least knew their type. Gangsters' wives. Tall, bleach blondes with facelifts and coke habits. Jasper stabbed the knives into their stomachs and lifted them like a shield, turning and stomping into the dining room. Taking a deep breath, Yara followed, bent over her submachine gun. A frenzy of gunfire, mostly aimed at Jasper, deafened her as she surveyed the people in the dining room. It was a who's who of the city's elite criminals, each rap sheet more heinous than the last. Yara lined her gun sights at a trio of psychopaths in leather jackets at a side table. She fired, the bullets pelting the men, the tables around them, the mirrors on the walls. Splattered blood misted the air, mingling with shattered glass, all glittering in the light of the oil lamps on the tables. 2 men to her left stood and shouted, and from the corner of her eye, Yara saw them aim their guns at her. She spun to face them, but Jasper got to them first, slicing off the first man's arm at the elbow. That arm might as well have been a stalk of celery for all the resistance it gave to the meat cleaver in Jasper's practiced hands. As Jasper drove his weapon of choice deep into the head of the second man, Yara spied another gangster. This one a friend of Maxim's, small and mean, shooting at Jasper. She spun and fired 3 shots into his chest. He toppled backward into a waiter's cart, spilling a grand's worth of caviar and vodka across the carpet. Over the spilled mess leapt a gaunt old man with wild hair, Dr. Varlam Parknock, a refugee from Mother Russia, Yara knew, where he was wanted for a string of crimes so inhumane that he was one of Interpol's most wanted. Yara fired at him, but the old guy was surprisingly quick. Shoving aside a waitress, he raced into the front hall and out of sight. Yara ran after him. There were at least a dozen people in the hall, all scrambling to get out of the broken front doors and over the crashed car outside. Yara tilted her head to one side, cracking her neck, then raised the gun and sprayed bullets like a fountain of death. After a few seconds, a dozen bodies lay twisted and tangled at the end of the hall, obscured behind a cloud of gun smoke. She turned and sauntered back into the dining room. Just beheaded a gangster near the wall to her left. Yara raised the submachine gun and shot another guy through the chest. She couldn't remember his name. As she turned to fire again, the gun clicked in her hand. Shit, she was out.
Watch out!
Jasper shouted, leaping to attack 2 men that had rushed toward her. He threw the cleaver into the first man, but the second had raised his pistol. Yara gasped as Jasper threw his arms around her and tackled her to the ground. He landed on top of her, his body heavy, his hot breath in her face. His mask had been knocked off during the fighting. A gun roared and Jasper grunted, but if he had been hit, it must have not been bad. He rolled off of her and kicked the shooter in the leg, hard. Yara heard the crack of bone, and from the assailant's shaking hands, the pistol fell right toward her. Yara caught it by the barrel, turned it in her hand, and shot the man in the head. She sat up, dizzy, the room spinning in her vision. There were bodies everywhere, and glass and blood, and her father. Where was he? She still hadn't seen him. Her gaze traveled the room, and she spotted Viktor Volkov. He was still on the bench against the far wall, in his usual spot. He had watched the bloody scene unfold, waiting, anger rising. But now Yara saw him stand, like a great grey shadow in the corner, and pulled out a pistol to shoot at Jasper. Jasper rolled to the right, knocking over another table as bullets flew by him. From the floor, Yara aimed at her father, but a foot kicked out of nowhere and knocked the gun from her hand. She scooted backward across the carpet as the foot drew back and kicked out again. Diving forward, Yara grabbed the henchman's leg and wrenched him off balance, using a wrestling move Maxim used to practice on her. He went down hard, the air knocked from his lungs. Yara jumped on top of him, hands searching the floor around them for a weapon. Her fingers landed on a silver-plated fork. Well, if it was good enough for Jasper during the family dinner, it would be good enough for Yara now. She held up the fork in both hands, then swung it down into the man's right eye. It sank deep, and he screamed. Rising shakily to her knees, Yara looked around.
Holy shit,
she grunted. Her father, she saw, was on fire. Flames licked up his hands and arms. Jasper must have thrown one of the oil lamps at him. Nice touch, she thought. Let the bastard burn. She heard tires squeal outside, and turning to look out the front windows, Yara saw 2 additional SUVs pull up onto the curb.
Outside! There are more coming!
She screamed to Jasper before shoving against the table nearest her. It fell heavily onto its side, its own oil lamp shattering against the wall beside the door and spewing up flames. Grabbing yet another submachine gun from the floor, Yara took cover behind the table and aimed into the hall. As soon as the men from the SUV started forcing their way inside, she opened fire. Glancing back over her shoulder, she saw a sight she wasn't likely to ever forget. The wolf versus the bear. Viktor Ivanovich Volkov and Jasper David Race were locked in hand-to-hand combat in the center of the restaurant. Her father was punching with flaming fists, tracing each punch through the air with a brilliant tail of fire. Jasper was fast, but not fast enough. Yara watched, eyes wide, as her father threw a wicked right hook which connected squarely in the center of Jasper's face. She gasped as Jasper's feet left the floor and he flew backward, into and through the swinging kitchen door, disappearing from view. Furious, she was about to turn and shoot at her father, but gangsters were now returning fire from the hall. Yara ducked and fired over the top of the table. From the corner of her vision, she saw her father lift a gun up from the floor. She thought he might shoot her, but instead, he aimed at the front window. The window shattered, and a torrent of gushing water from the broken fire hydrant outside sprayed into the restaurant. She heard her father's grateful moan as his flaming arms were extinguished. Meanwhile, a dozen gangsters charged from the hall, around the flaming doorway, and into the dining room. Yara shot the first 2 as they came in, but then a bullet hit her gun and sent it dancing out of her hand. A fist flew down over the table and connected with her head, knocking her onto her side. Yara tried to rise, but someone shoved aside the table and drove their right foot into her ribcage. She grunted, curling up on her side.
What's this then?
The gangster hissed.
It's a fucking girly girl in a pink fucking hat. How about it, boys? Should we have some fun with her?
She looked up at them, 10 armed men, a vicious pack of wolves encircling her, hungry for flesh. Yara only smiled. She knew someone was about to save her, her dark guardian. And sure enough, look who's back. Jasper marched from the kitchen, back hunched, blood streaming down his busted face, a new meat cleaver in each hand, fresh from the restaurant kitchen. He charged into the fray, a tornado in a trench coat, arms a flurry of muscled motion. Chopping, slicing, gashing, severing arms and sawing necks before the henchmen could even track his movements through their ranks. Around the bloody massacre, flames now danced up the walls and ceiling. Steam from the water pouring inside mixed with the smoke into a choking, blinding fog. As Jasper threw one of the meat cleavers into the forehead of the last man, Yara looked past his dropping body and saw her father. Victor's eyes stared hatefully at Jasper, and in his burned hands he held a gold-plated revolver, the extravagant weapon of one of his dead men, no doubt, gleaming in the firelight. Victor raised the gun. Yara snatched her ski mask and wrenched it off her head.
Papa!
Her father hesitated, fingers on the trigger, and Yara saw his gaze flick over to her. Their eyes met. She held his gaze, savoring the look of shock as he witnessed the reveal of the architect of his ruin, his own daughter, his darling Yara. His eyes bulged, then he spasmed, mouth opening in a silent scream. Jasper was standing beside him, bloody cleaver in hand, and as Yara watched, her father's severed hands fell bloodily onto the carpet. She pulled herself to her feet, leaving the ski mask on the floor, and watched as her father stumbled backward through the dining room, holding up the bleeding stumps where his hands had been. Those big, hairy hands that struck Kirill so many times over the years. Reaching the far wall, he collapsed onto his bench, groaning. They approached him, raging fire at their backs. Yara bent and picked up his severed hands on the carpet. They were still warm. She slid his wolf head ring off the index finger of his right hand. One of its ruby eyes had broken. Yara put the ring into her pocket, then pulled the golden gun from Victor's charred, dead fingers. It was a beautiful weapon, she had to admit, and the perfect tool for the task at hand. A symbol of violence and vanity. It would do the job well. On the bench, Viktor Volkov let out a gravelly sigh. He blinked up at them, wincing, swooning, then showed his golden teeth to his daughter in a final grin.
After all your rebellion over the years, you do this. Ha! Truly, you are my daughter.
Yara flinched at his words.
Only for today. Only for one bloody day. Niet, daughter.
He shook his head.
Always.
Yara raised the gun.
This is what you deserve, you fucking bastard. You ruin everything. You corrupt everything. Not everything.
His smile widened.
You think I corrupted your beloved Kirill? No, darling. Kirill isn't in that prison because of any decision he made. It was you.
He pointed one of his bloody stumps at her.
You thought you could just run off and leave me. Go to some fucking university and there wouldn't be consequences.
Yara shook her head. What was this? Was he still messing with her, even now? Or did he think he could distract her long enough for more men to come to his aid?
What the fuck are you saying?
Yara snarled. He rolled his bloodshot eyes.
I'm saying, you dumb bitch, that Kirill didn't know what was in that truck. He thought he was helping a friend move. I hid those women inside. I made sure the border patrol would find them.
The revolver in Yara's hands began to shake. Tears blurred her vision.
You framed your own son. You got him 25 years. Just to get back at me.
She couldn't believe it. And not just because of what it meant for Kirill. He had always been cruel to Kirill. In that moment, Yara realized the truth. Her father loved controlling her, even more than he valued his money. Wow. She cocked her head, marveling at his wickedness.
You lost all that money? Just for that? Just to piss me off?
There was blood in her father's smile now, staining his tongue and the spaces between his teeth.
Like I said, we are the same, Yara. You and I. Sus just for mess tea.
She pulled the trigger. The gun fired. The bullet punched into her father's forehead, right between his eyes, ricocheted in his skull, and came to rest somewhere in his ruined brain. His head lolled forward, watery blood streaming from his nostrils into the white hairs of his beard. His body tilted slightly sideways, bumping against the corpse of one of his girlfriends on the bench beside him. It might have been Anya or Angel. Yara couldn't tell. A stray bullet in the brawl had struck the girl's face, torn off a large chunk, and splattered the rest with blood. It may have been one of Yara's bullets that did that. Yara lowered the gun. She wiped at her eyes and turned to Jasper.
We can go now. I'm finished.
But Jasper did not move. He was staring at her.
Yara, what was the last thing your father said? What?
Jasper's face had been smashed by her father's punch, his nose broken. There was blood on his mouth and chin, and his eyes were bloodshot and squinting.
Your father said something in Russian. What was it?
Yara hesitated, her mouth suddenly very dry.
Just something.
Jasper turned his body to face her, the bloody meat cleaver held up.
Tell me.
She swallowed. She had slipped up, hadn't she? So much for being finished. Accepting that this, finally, would be the crescendo to the day's violence, Yara told Jasper the truth.
My father said that he and I are suchestvemesti. It means creatures of vengeance.
Jasper flinched, as if she had hit him.
Yeah, I thought that's what I heard. Mesti is a Russian word then, the word for vengeance. So the first time we spoke at the butcher shop, you said it was your dream to be a pilot, to captain a plane, right? Fuck, you are Captain Mesti 99.
Yara shook her head.
What? No, well, yes, fine, but I only wanted to check, if you really were who you said you were. And what does that even matter now? What does that matter?
Jasper screamed.
You've played me for a fucking fool. The captain was my first friend, my only friend, the one I could tell things to, that I bared my fucking heart to, the one I was going to tell about.
His voice trailed off. He shook his head.
I'm such an idiot, but at least I have some consolation.
He took a step toward her, brandishing the cleaver.
You can kill me when it's done, Jasper. That's what you said to me. Well, Yara, it's done now.
Yara steadied herself, eyes locked on his. Had she meant that when she said it? Maybe, but standing here now, what did she feel? Viktor Volkov sat slumped and leaking brain fluid a few feet beside them. The corpses of his men lay all around them. And back at Yara's flat, Maxim was getting cold, ruining her hardwood floor with his blood. Today, Yara Volkova had erased the toxic men from her life, from life itself. The men whom she hated and loved, and hated herself for loving. There was only one left.
Yeah,
she said with a sigh.
About that.
Yara raised the golden revolver and shot Jasper. The bullet struck him in the gut and knocked him backwards. He stumbled, vanishing into the steam and smoke.
Bitch!
The cleaver flew from the mist at Yara. She tried to duck out of the way, but it struck her across the face with a horrid slashing sound. Pain blossomed like fire in her head, and hot, slick blood poured down the left half of her face. She looked around, blood filling half her vision, trying to find Jasper in the chaos. She could hear voices outside, men shouting and sirens. Firefighters were trying to get inside to search for survivors. Clasping a hand painfully over the left side of her face, Yara squinted through the dining room. Jasper was on the move again, clutching his bleeding stomach, marching through the flames. She saw him jump against the last and shattered window and burst through to the sidewalk outside. Yara stumbled forward, growing lightheaded, life leaking from her with every passing second. Jasper was going to get away. She had to stop him, to stop. She swooned, almost falling over into a burning table. She had to concentrate. One more action, one more perfect shot. Then she would be done. Left hand tight over her ruined eye and bleeding cheek, she looked out the broken window into the night. Jasper was on the other side of the street, about to enter an alley. There were police in the street now, shouting to each other, but none of them noticed the big shadow of the killer about to disappear forever. Yara inhaled. She raised the gun, aimed at the center of his wide back, and fired. The gun roared, then fell from her limp hand. She stumbled, straining to stay upright, staring outside. At first, she thought she had missed. Then she saw Jasper collapse onto the sidewalk. He turned slowly and looked back at her. Then his body slumped forward onto the ground. A few seconds later, police officers surrounded him, aiming their service weapons at the sundown slasher, yelling at him not to move. He didn't. Inside the blazing restaurant, Yara smiled. Flames burst up around her, blocking out her view of the outside world. Good. She deserved this, she knew, to be cremated beside her father's remains. After all, in the end, she had turned out to be exactly like him. Hadn't she? A creature of vengeance.
Yara! Miss Yara, can you hear me?
Yara gasped, looking around through the blazing fire.
What? Who?
A figure ran out to the fire and grabbed her.
Come on, we gotta get you out of here. Charlie, what are you? Your daddy's got a damn distillery's worth of hard liquor under our feet.
He screamed at her.
We gotta go, now.
Charlie threw one arm around her shoulders and, guiding her, rushed them back toward the kitchen, the way he had come in. A roof beam crashed down beside them, spitting up sparks. Coughing, Charlie pulled her into the kitchen.
How did you know where to?
Yara stammered.
I can track your phone's location, remember?
He said, rushing her out the back door. His car was parked in the alley just outside. Holding up Yara with one hand, Charlie reached out and opened the back door. But before he could help her into the car, the ground under them shook madly, a thunderous whoop, and a wall of fire burst behind them. Yara was hurled forward, tumbling into the back seat as fiery bits of shattered brick sprayed inside the car around her. She heard Charlie grunt and cough. Then her car door was slammed, and she saw him running around the vehicle. He opened the driver's side door and threw himself inside. His cap was gone, and his suit was smoking.
Let's get the hell out of here,
he wheezed. She heard the engine roar, and the car careened forward through smoke and embers, bouncing over burning rubble, turning a corner, and heading away from the smoking ruins of Ignatius' kitchen.
Charlie,
Yara heard herself say.
I did it. I killed them. Yes, ma'am. It seems you did,
he said breathlessly, swerving through a red light.
And you know what that means, Miss Yara. It means you're dead too.
It took Yara a moment to realize what he was saying. She had thought she must die to make things right, and she did. The old Yara Volkova had died in that fire. This new Yara, the one with the one eye and the skin on her left cheek sliced cleanly away. Who would she be? Only time would tell.
We can't trust that your father's people won't have men at the hospitals,
Charlie was saying as he sped onto the highway.
But my brother-in-law's a doctor. Lives just west of town. He'll take good care of you, ma'am. I'm sure of it. You'll be fine.
Yara nodded slowly, letting her body tilt sideways into the window. She felt very tired and weak. But maybe Charlie was right. Maybe she would be fine. She just wished. She wished she could tell Kirill that it was done, that it was over, that for the first time in their lives, they were free. Outside, the sun was starting to rise, painting the sky with a golden glow. As the streetlights and sunlit buildings rushed by outside the car window, Yara clung to her bleeding face with one hand and hummed a little Russian lullaby to herself, thinking of her brother, and wondering if, somewhere out there, Kirill was thinking of her too. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy these stories, be sure to click subscribe and check out some more stories here.